This week, the boy wizard finally faces his destiny in Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2.
Bring him to me. If we find him, we can end this.
We catch up with Jennifer Aniston, Kevin Spacey, and Jason Bateman in Horrible Bosses.
I can crush you anytime I want.
Roger reviews the new Errol Morris movie, Tabloid.
It was a perfect tabloid story.
Come on, Tom. Let's finish this the way we started.
Together!
Harry's back for the 8th and final time. Hi, I'm Christy Lemire of the Associated Press.
And I'm Ignatiy Vishnevetsky of Movie.com. Our first film is Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2, the 8th and final film in Warner Brothers' decade-long project to adapt J.K. Rowling's immensely popular series of novels. Continuing the story from last year's grim Deathly Hallows Part 1, Part 2 follows boy wizard turned young adult wizard Harry Potter, played by Daniel Radcliffe, as he prepares to finally defeat his noseless arch-nemesis, Lord Voldemort, played by Ralph Fiennes.
Harry Potter, the boy who lived, come to die.
However, before he can defeat Voldemort, Potter and his gang have to destroy several Horcruxes, which are magical objects that allow minor characters and subplots to develop while staving off the final showdown for at least another hour and a half.
He knows if we find and destroy all the Horcruxes, we'll be able to kill him. I reckon he'll stop at nothing to make sure we don't find the rest. Oh, there's more. One of them's at Hogwarts.
What? You saw it?
I saw the castle and Rowena Ravenclaw. It must have something to do with her. We have to go there now.
Deathly Hallows Part 2 is almost overpowered by its need to tie up as many loose threads of plot and character as possible. As a result, the movie works better in individual sequences that take advantage of its imaginative special effects and production design than it does as a whole. A long detour to steal a Horcrux from a bank vault, which makes good use of the movie's 3D format, stands out.
They've added the Gemino curse. Everything you touch will multiply.
Give me the sword.
Deathly Hallows Part 2 is a mixed bag. Impeccably acted and designed, it's also lopsided and rushed, and a bit lifeless. Part 1 wasn't without its flaws, but at least it established a sense of apocalyptic foreboding and concluded on a strong, chilly note. Part 2 feels hermetically sealed and anticlimactic, with an ending that conveys the final words of Rowling's novel in the most trite and tacked-on way imaginable. I'm sure devoted fans of the series will enjoy this, but it just doesn't stand on its own 2 feet as a film. I have to give this a thumbs down.
I have to give it a thumbs up, and I would say go see it in 3D. Which I'm sure people will be shocked to hear me say, given my ordinary disdain for 3D. But they really took their time in converting it, and the details really pop out, especially in the big set pieces, which are dark and huge and gorgeous and foreboding. And there's a ton of tension here, there's a ton of suspense. Everything's at stake, finally.
I'll give you that the 3D is really smart. I think it's very well used. It's used mostly for the special effects, not so much, for having characters pop out as having, kind of flames and spells pop out in the foreground. I would not agree with you about the tension or really about this sense of an epic. Everything in this film feels actually surprisingly small to me. It feels very low stakes. You have no sense of what is really at stake in this final battle.
Everything is at stake, good and evil. The whole series has been building toward this. This is why Harry has to fight Voldemort. I'm not going to give away what happens, of course, but everything, like the wizarding world, the future of good and evil.
That is something that we hear in the dialogue. You never get a sense of that, because all you really see is just characters fighting and conspiring.
No, the whole thing is rushed. It's the shortest film of the entire series.
It's
2 hours and 10 minutes.
It's too rushed.
Oh, everything is jammed into it. It's propulsive, it's non-stop, and you're on the edge of your seat the whole time.
It's non-stop stop. It's not propulsive. I found it very lopsided. I think there are moments where it moves way too quickly, especially in the final showdown.
Daniel Radcliffe is great, though, in that and in the whole thing, and as is Alan Rickman as Snape.
No, all the actors are good, but screenplay could use a little work.
All right, what do you get when you combine a beauty queen, a bizarre kidnapping, and one of the great documentary makers of all time? Roger Ebert's in his office with a review of Tabloid.
Tabloid is a story only the strange and brilliant Errol Morris could film. This is Bill Curtis speaking for Roger Ebert. It's about Joyce McKinney, a former Miss Wyoming. She was alleged to have kidnapped an American Mormon missionary in England, handcuffed him to a bed, and made him a sex slave.
I mean, it had kinky sex, it had religion, it had a beauty queen, kidnap at gunpoint, chains being spread-eagled, it had Mormon missionaries. There was something in that story for everyone.
The whole story is a lie, says McKinney, supplying Morris with her perky alternative perspective on the same events.
I mean, I can never understand the public's fascination with my love life. I'm not a movie star. I'm just a person, a human being that was caught in an extraordinary circumstance.
Who's telling the truth? I believe Morris doesn't think it matters. It's Joyce McKinney he cares about, how she presents herself, how she copes, who she is to herself, what she does to explain a bizarre and contradictory story.
It was like in the movies, when Juliet looks at Romeo and it's pew. The next thing I know, he vanished into thin air. I found him in England. The Mormons had him.
Joyce set up this plan.
I knew there was only one way to get Kirk out of Mormonism, and that was to make love with him.
With the current scandal involving news of the world, Tabloid offers insights into one of the biggest British tabloid stories of the 1970s. And we meet some of the reporters who were on the case.
By this time, the British Isles was on fire with the Joyce McKinney story. That's all that was being talked about in the pubs and taverns and restaurants. Where were you when you read the Joyce McKinney story, you know?
What is amazing is that Morris gets Joyce McKinney to talk. And not only her, but others who were involved, all staring directly into the camera, and all sounding uncannily as if they're speaking the truth. I've seen Tabloid twice. It is a spellbinding enigma, and one of the damnedest films Morris has ever made.
Thanks so much for that, Roger. And you know, Tabloid is a lot of fun, but Joyce McKinney is still not happy with the way her story is being told. She's going to screenings of the movie, and she's heckling, and she's still at the center of attention.
I didn't think it was a lot of fun, unlike you and Roger. I actually think this is Errol Morris's weakest film.
Wow.
Well, coming up later, the thriller The Ward and the return of director John Carpenter.
Sorry, did I hurt you? Did I hurt you, little kid?
Don't! But first, here's a look at movies now in the theaters.
We need to trim some of the fat. What do you mean by trim the fat?
I want you to fire the fat people. They're lazy and they're slow and they make me sad to look at.
You can start with large Marge.
Marge, can you come in here, please?
What?
That's a scene from Horrible Bosses, about three guys who hate their jobs and want to kill their bosses. And really, who among us hasn't pondered that kind of plan? Jason Bateman, Charlie Day, and Jason Sudeikis star as the put-upon employees. Kevin Spacey, Jennifer Aniston, and Colin Farrell play the horrible bosses. And Spacey, in particular, thrives in this kind of role.
You know that last month you made me work so late, I missed saying goodbye to my gam-gam? I'm sorry, what? My grandmother. I told you that I needed to see her because she was very, very sick. You said if I left early, I'd get fired. And she died before I made it to the hospital.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
I had no idea that you called your grandmother.
Because these guys aren't nearly as sophisticated as they pretend to be, they end up hiring someone they think is a hitman, played by Jamie Foxx.
Why don't you kill each other's bosses?
That's actually a good idea.
Not bad.
Yeah. Yeah, like Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, right?
I didn't see that. They do that now?
The Danny DeVito movie. It's a funny one.
Yeah, that famous Alfred Hitchcock Danny DeVito movie. That's the one. Come on.
Yes, Horrible Bosses is essentially Hitchcock's Strangers on a Train, with one extra killing and a couple more jokes about genitalia. Our three would-be murderers bumble and bungle their way from one situation to the next and occasionally get something right by accident.
Dude, the chances are he's not even home. Hey, I haven't seen any activity in this house. What are you doing? You're not going to ring the doorbell? Dale.
Director Seth Gordon's film wallows in silliness, gleefully and without an ounce of remorse or self-consciousness. And even though you're a grown-up and you should know better, you'll be happy to wallow right along, too. It's a movie that's wildly, brazenly stupid, but also, you know, fun. And if there's a sloppiness to the construction of it, well, that's just fitting given the subject matter. Thumbs up from me.
Sloppiness to the construction is an understatement. This movie is a mess. Look, when you're doing comedy, whether it's a whole feature film or a knock-knock joke, structure, construction, pacing, those are really the things that make comedy. You can tell a bad joke, but if you tell it well enough, it's funny. I mean, sure, at the beginning that you have this fairly good sense of structure. You have these kind of three guys who, and their three bosses are introduced separately. But then at about the halfway point, it just starts falling apart, almost unspooling before your eyes.
Now, there are enough individual weird moments here and individual performances, especially from Kevin Spacey, who is great in this kind of slick, evil role. Colin Farrell doing something totally different with that bad comb-over and just being a complete jerk. I laughed enough the whole way through that I could forgive the lags in pacing or
the lags in pacing
logic.
Or the fact that it's almost impossible to believe that these three people are friends. And that
I believe
they would
that. If they had grown up together, maybe they're different guys now. I didn't have a problem with that. That's like the least of the movie's problems.
Oh, now you finally admit that.
No, but it's fun. But I had a good time in spite of myself.
You know what? I have a good time watching, a YouTube video of a man stepping on a rake. That doesn't mean I think it's a good movie.
That's a good movie. That's a whole movie right there.
Well, speaking of great cinema, our next film, Zookeeper, is a drama whose alternately playful and rigorous use of form manages to recall the works of both Choi Hark and Maurice Pialat. I'm just kidding. It's a movie where Kevin James talks to animals and falls down a lot.
Get over here! Please, this way! Hey, get them out of there. I'll distract them.
Got it.
Crap.
James plays a zookeeper who is trying to win back an icy ex with the help of some talking animals. But he has a smarter, more attractive coworker who obviously appreciates him for the sensitive, animal-loving schlub that he is. She's played by Rosario Dawson.
Griffin!
Dawson is lovely as ever, but this is for the most part a talking animal movie. And it's the kind of talking animal movie where the animals' mouths are unconvincingly animated and their voices sound like they were recorded separately, giving the corny humor an unsettling, disconnected tone. Keep in mind that the following scene took 5 people to write.
All right, let's see. That's a total of $1,636.74. Will that be cash or credit?
Hang it up. So close.
Produced by Adam Sandler, who, unfortunately, voices a monkey, Zookeeper isn't content with being just a shoddy comedy aimed at the lucrative people who find Kevin James falling down funny demographic. It's also vaguely misogynistic, ugly-looking, and features product placement so brazen that it would make Michael Bay blush. This is just profoundly bad.
It is bad, and even Kevin James, who has a great likability to him, a great sort of everyman sweetness to him, even he can't make this tolerable. There is precisely one funny scene in the entire movie, and that is where Kevin James and the gorilla, voiced by Nick Nolte, who's pretty good actually, go to TGI Fridays. Because it's loony in a way that nothing else is in the entire movie.
It's loony in a way that is so obviously, crassly placed there for marketing purposes.
Oh, it's all awkward. It's all horrible. But at least I laughed that one time. That's all I can say.
Really? The film failed in both respects. I neither laughed nor wanted to go to TGI Fridays afterwards.
Potato skins. All right. Our next movie is the dark comedy Lucky. Colin Hanks stars as Ben, a sad sack legal clerk who wins the Iowa State Lottery and finds himself $36 million richer. This suddenly makes him attractive to Lucy, the woman he's loved since childhood without much success, played by Ari Grainer.
How are you doing?
What are you doing?
Oh, man. I'm just doing a little jogging. On the weekends, I jog. You know, here and there. Today I'm here.
Why, yes, that is Anne Margaret as Ben's mother. She doesn't get much to do besides dither and worry. But Ben might not be as sweet and innocent as he looks. He might actually be a serial killer. Jeffrey Tambor plays the detective who questions him.
I'm Detective Whalen, and I'm working on the Leslie Singer case.
You should find all the people that bought lottery tickets that day.
The only person I know who bought a ticket on that day was you.
Why?
Because you won.
That's right.
Hanks has that same likable demeanor as his father, and Grainer shows some unexpected flashes of humor. But Lucky just never works tonally, and the whole serial killer undercurrent is never exploited for its maximum suspense potential. Director Gil Cates Jr. just sort of picks it up and drops it off here and there. And if it's meant to be a cautionary tale about the perils of newfound wealth, Lucky really has nothing new to say. Thumbs down.
Well, it never works tonally because it has no sense of tone. It seems to be reaching for this very dark, bleak comedy, you know, with this whole serial killer subplot. But then it's also trying to be a very ordinary kind of Sundance-style indie with these music montage scenes, you know, the Wes Anderson-derived head-on framing of objects on a table, and things like that. Just, it doesn't work.
Yeah, the thing with the bodies piling up, I mean, that comes out of nowhere. It never works. Ari Grainer's never likable for a second. I mean, she's kind of cute, but she's keening.
Neither character is likable, but if you're making a film about such, you know, unlikable characters, you have to have a firmer control of what you're doing on the screen than this movie has.
Make them interesting.
Or make the movie, at least, interesting to watch. Well, John Carpenter was this country's most famous and influential director of horror movies for most of the last quarter century. The Ward is Carpenter's first feature film in a decade. And though it's a low-budget movie that Carpenter didn't write himself, it still shows a master at work.
This isn't right.
The plot, I'll admit, isn't anything you haven't seen before. It's a 1960s set haunted mental hospital story in which Amber Heard plays a woman who's been committed for reasons unknown, and Jared Harris plays the head doctor. But just look at the way Carpenter directs this fairly ordinary scene. The rhythmic editing and all those low-angle shots give it an old-school creepiness.
What are they?
Something to help you get better.
You're right, I feel better already.
The Ward is by no means a perfect film, but Carpenter has an unparalleled gift for constructing a sequence. His sense of lighting, his way with moving the camera, and his ability to invoke an icy atmosphere come through even when the script or the acting don't. The end of the film is a good example. While the actual twists might seem hokey, the way Carpenter films something as simple as the inside of a dumbwaiter is chilling enough to make up for it. I've got some reservations, but it's a thumbs up from me.
Yeah, the twists are beyond hokey. I mean, they are laughable. It's so ridiculous that they want us to go there with it. I mean, clearly any movie set in a mental hospital, they're going to toy with perspective and perception of reality, and it's going to make us guess, you know, who is sane and who is not, who to trust, and make us doubt ourselves. What happens here with who these people are? I'm not going to say, of course. It's just ridiculous. I was laughing. Like, really? We're going to go there with it?
But, you know, as they say, it's not what it's about. It's how it's about it. You know, for me, this is all about... Profound. This is, for me, all about Carpenter's direction.
It's not about characterization, that's for sure, because each woman is just like this one-note type, and it's not about any kind of development
I don't
them
understand.
at all.
I don't understand how you could have given a thumbs up to Insidious several months ago on the show.
Because that was fun.
Insidious is not fun.
Tense and
you
fun
know what?
and
it's
atmospheric.
It is not atmospheric. It is sloppy. This is atmospheric. This is how you make a horror film.
This has its moments. A couple of jump scares.
The scene where, here, a completely non-scary scene. The scene where the inmates dance to the New Beats Run, Baby Run.
That's one scene. All right.
Worth the price of admission alone.
Not at all. Next up is Project Nim, which is very much worth seeing. This is the latest film from director James Marsh, who won the Oscar for Best Documentary for Man on Wire in 2009. This time he turns his attention to a chimpanzee named Nim, who was the subject of a bold experiment in the 1970s. Nim lived with humans as if he were one of them and communicated through sign language.
Oh, I love the cats.
He was really, really tender with the cat, and he'd hold it, and he just sort of liked to feel the touch, something about it.
The people who worked with Nim all speak about the bond they formed with him and how gratifying the research was. You get the sense that their intentions were honorable, at least at first.
I took him out on walks. I didn't bring food. I didn't do the kind of things that would interrupt the relationship or the building of the relationship.
But like the experiment itself, Project Nim evolved from something inspiring and often humorous to a pointed and deeply sad portrait of arrogance run amok. Greed and glory end up overriding decency and altruism, and it's heartbreaking to watch. Project Nim ends on a vaguely uplifting note, but not before shaking you up and making you ponder what humanity is really all about. Thumbs up from me.
Now, this is a talking animal movie. I don't think I like this quite as much as you do. Okay. I still think it's very strong. Mm-hmm. And this takes more than a few pages from the Errol Morris playbook in the way the interviews are, recorded in the use of the construction, the use of footage, the use of title cards, reenactments. But I actually like this more than Tabloid, than the new Errol Morris movie.
For me, it worked mostly because it's just, as a mom, to imagine what it's like to have this little baby creature being shuttled from one person to another and just being dumped eventually. It was heartbreaking.
I find the character of Herb Terrace, who's the head researcher, who really comes across very poorly, but the fact that he reveals this kind of uncaring side of himself so easily in the film, I find that really fascinating.
But I don't think James Marsh is judging him or anybody else.
No.
We all get to figure them out for ourselves, I believe.
Yeah. It's the 40th anniversary of Stanley Kubrick's A Clockwork Orange. Our contributor David Poland takes a look at that film, as well as Kubrick's other classics.
For me, Kubrick is the greatest director ever. He left us just 12 films, at least 12 that he wanted us to see, and each one of them is perfect, intricate, and filled with images and ideas that have been etched in the culture forever.
Gentlemen, you can't fight in here. This is the war room.
It's been 40 years since A Clockwork Orange, my personal favorite. But more importantly, this year, Warner Brothers and Criterion Collection are putting out the entire Kubrick collection. So we'll now be able to see every film he ever made, done in fabulous Blu-ray. Here's 9 of them, starting with Spartacus through Eyes Wide Shut. Criterion's taking up the other ones. Amazing.
Up, all of you.
Do you consider the eating of oysters to be moral and the eating of snails to be immoral?
No, Master.
Of course not.
It's not just the moments that everybody remembers from the Kubrick films that make him so very special.
What was the decisive factor? My garden?
Things were cherry prize.
Oh.
It's the moments that you've maybe forgotten over the years that you now have a chance to remember on these Blu-rays.
Can you imagine how I feel about it, Dimitri? Why do you think I'm calling you? Just to say hello?
I know I've made some very poor decisions recently. But I can give you my complete assurance that my work will be back to normal.
Do you still feel suicidal?
Well, put it this way. I feel very low in myself. I can't see much in the future. And I feel that any second something terrible is going to happen to me.
Lord Bullingdon, cock your pistol and prepare to fire.
like show business, like no business I know.
Thank you, David.
Okay, recapping the votes on this week's show. We split on Harry Potter and the Deathly Hallows Part 2. I am up, Ignatiy is down. We split again on Horrible Bosses. I am up, Ignatiy is down. And another split for The Ward. I am down, Ignatiy is up. 2 thumbs down for Zookeeper, another 2 thumbs down for Lucky. And 2 thumbs up for Project Nim. Also, Roger gives a big thumbs up for Tabloid.
And don't forget that you can join the discussion on Facebook and Twitter and at ebertpresents.com.
Join us next week for Season 2, our summer season. We'll review Captain America, The First Avenger, and the best movies of the year so far, our picks and Roger's. Till then, the balcony's closed.
Harry's world is getting darker and more devious, and Daniel Radcliffe, who plays Harry, is even speculating that his character might end up dying at the end of the series. I only hope that if they stay with the original cast of kids as they continue to grow up, the material won't suffer, because the temptation might be to turn this into a Teen Wizards versus Monster Slasher series, and that would betray the spirit of Harry and the audience. As for the sequel, it's not quite as good as the first 2 chapters, but it's still wonderful and it's engaging. I give Harry Potter and the Prisoner of Azkaban 3.5 stars, and I'm Roger Ebert, ABC 7 News.
For more reviews and more from Roger's office, visit our website at ebertpresents.com.